right, everybody. Welcome back to another Fluid Webinar Series event. Today we're very excited to be presenting on the graduation of your marketing, and we just thought it was appropriate with the month and all the graduations that are going on, and kind of talking about how marketing in general has graduated from traditional to digital, and now it's this hybrid omnichannel thing that we're going to go into depths all about and show you kind of how you can take advantages of both the traditional and the digital side of things. And so without further ado, I will kick this thing off with the group. So as usual, my name's Dustin Cederholm. I'm the Digital Marketing Director for Fluid. I'll be your host and be kicking it back to our panel today, and I'm really excited. This week we have a very special guest, but before I introduce him, I will introduce Phil Case, our Managing Director. Phil, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good to be with you. I've been on many webinars with Dustin, and he always does a great job facilitating, and excited to speak to something that's passionate for us, that we don't just recommend digital channels or traditional, but look at being a little bit holistic in our approach.
Fantastic. And also with us today from Jack Fisher Homes and Henry Walker Homes is the Sales and Marketing Manager, Ronnie Williams. Ronnie, welcome.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
Do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and give a bit of a background for our listeners?
So I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for two different home builders. So Henry Walker Homes, Jack Fisher Homes, both relatively new home builders to the market in comparison to some of the larger national builders who've been in business for years and years and years.
Sure.
We're 5 years old, at most. So so we're relatively young, but our team is big and has come from other builders and things. But me personally, I got my degree in design marketing from the U, and have been with Henry Walker, Jack Fisher for about 4 years, and so know a lot of what we've done, what's worked, what hasn't worked, at least in our industry, and kind of how it relates to what we use as traditional, what we use as digital, kind of where maybe our goals are for the future as kind of home building moves into more digital. We're a little slower of an industry to kind of catch up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're definitely moving that direction, and I'm excited to kind of see what you guys have and what we can implement on our end.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we want to talk about today. Before we get too much into the depths of that, do you mind just telling us a little background of Henry Walker and Jack Fisher as well?
Yeah. So we're a Utah-based home builder. Really the difference between the two, Jack Fisher Homes and Henry Walker Homes, is the price point, kind of what we're looking for from a home builder side. Henry Walker Homes is a production home builder, so other builders around here that are similar would be like a Brighton Homes, Ivory Homes, Richmond Homes, things like that, where we'll buy a community of multiple lots and we, build a great home in there. Whereas Jack Fisher Homes is a little more semi-custom. Maybe there's only we build one home in a community, or maybe we go and build, a very small community, but it's more semi-custom, much higher price point. So that's kind of how the two different home builders at least are. So does that kind of answer what you're looking for?
Yeah, perfect. I think that definitely puts it in perspective for our listeners as to how you compare with the marketplace.
I was also going to say it's interesting to note that even in his title, his VP of Sales and Marketing, and that sales and marketing are often coming together. We're seeing smarketing more and more, where we see this inextricable link that the attitude is, marketing owns more and more of the revenue than ever before, and the expectations are, hey, you need to bring in 30-40% of it. And often we see those positions being coupled. So it's even interesting, not only is omnichannel coming together, but also sales and marketing needed to more not only rely on each other, but often who they report up to as an individual that has responsibilities for both.
And it kind of goes both ways. The marketing people need to have influence on how does your sales team present what you as a marketing team have decided the best way as you a company market yourself. Well, you want your sales team to present that way then and sell that way then. And so but then on the sales side, you can't ignore what marketing efforts are happening, because you don't want somebody to come in and say, hey, I saw your promotion you're running, and they have no idea what it is. So yeah, they have to be tightly woven, or else it's just it doesn't work.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, and I don't know if you guys know this and do me a favor, but you're definitely teeing up our next month's webinar, which will be about marketing. And so I think it's interesting that even in this one, and we've seen in previous webinars as well with the combined title, but just how important this really is, regardless of if you're doing traditional or digital media. Let's jump into a couple of things real quick as far as how you guys can follow us. We're live on Twitter. You can find us on the hashtag Fluid Webinar Series. You can also direct tweet to our handles. We are at GetFluid, or you can reach right here at Jack Fisher Homes and at Henry Walker Homes. And so if you guys have any questions or anything, we'll be monitoring those channels and we'll be able to respond to you on those as well. Real quickly, as we mentioned, we wanted to discuss traditional and digital marketing, but we thought we would give everybody there a background of what the definitions of these marketing terms really are. And so what is traditional marketing? I think we all pretty much know what traditional marketing is. I don't know if you guys want to take a stab at defining it, as these guys can read what's on the screen, but maybe we can give our own rendition of traditional marketing as well.
I think of traditional marketing as I talk to brands of the past to say, well, I'm an HVAC company, so I naturally buy a classified ad. I put it in the classifieds in the yellow pages. When that's delivered to people's door, they go and look it up when they have an HVAC problem, heating, cooling, and they say, oh, this person has a pretty big ad, it looks nice. I'm going to call them, ask them to come down to fix my air conditioner, to fix my garage, or whatever it might be, the service that they need. And that's how I think people were used to. That's kind of the traditional. You could do classifieds, you could do billboard, you could do newspaper, you could do magazines, you could do radio. And that's kind of, I think, the world that we're coming from. I don't know if you differ in that.
No, I think, I'm trying to think if I have anything to add. I guess when I think traditional, in some ways you almost think like old school way of doing things.
Exactly.
It's just the way that has been tried, true, it's tested, but... it's maybe less risky, if you will. Sometimes in newer marketing strategies that we'll kind of talk about more is you don't really know sometimes. It's a new technology or it's a new way of doing something. It's a new approach to how we can reach people, how we can advertise to people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes from somebody who's, putting together budgets at the beginning of the year, trying to figure out what do I put my money toward because I only have this much to spend. What do I spend it on? Sometimes traditional marketing you just want to have there just because at least it's going to work. And there's some, each industry kind of has its own traditional pieces that are traditional to that industry. Mm-hmm. Because like in home building, there's not a whole lot of radio and things like that, but there's signage everywhere. Yeah. You see signs everywhere, but other businesses don't do signage, mm-hmm. But that's definitely a traditional thing because you don't see, other companies trying to put signs miles away from their communities to drive people there.
Yeah, not at all. But I do think, like you said even earlier, is traditional to me just seems like where so many of us are coming from, and so many industries still really are kind of relying on, because that is the old school way. That's what everybody did. It was, I know we have people on who are doing furniture sales, and the RC Willey model, it's just mass mailers, it's radio, it's TV, it's just all across the traditional thing. And they've definitely seen RC Willey do a good job of bringing on the digital component, but for me, I still think of RC Willey as a free hot dog and this big mailer that I would get, and different kind of Saturday Sunday deals. And you get the same in the automotive world, and then you kind of switch to the signage and things maybe for real estate. And maybe even some mailers, but really even the one thing I think we missed is just the salesperson. Mm-hmm. A real estate agent is your major marketing, and I think that's mm-hmm. about as traditional as it gets.
Yeah.
I will say I heard a story recently on a panel I was on they said the very best marketing I ever got for Alamo car rentals was in Hawaii. I got off the plane, I got into the rental van, or to take me to the rental cars. And the gal there, it was 11 p.m. at night, everyone was super grumpy after a 7-hour flight, and she said, "Aloha, welcome to Hawaii. For the next 1 minute and 37 seconds, I get to be your van, driver, and I'm going to make sure you have the most incredible experience." And just went on, and he just said her enthusiasm was so engaging And he said, I am now faithful to Alamo, and I've taken pictures with her and blogged about her, just that experience that he had. And that was the very best marketing he said I'd ever gotten.
Well, and I think as we also talk about the sales marketing side of it, you go digital and you start to really feel like maybe there's that impersonal feel to digital, whereas traditional had a little bit more friendly, and this great story that you just shared. So I think that's really one of the things that almost makes people frightened to go digital, is that they're getting the person out of the entire cycle. And I think today will show that that's not necessarily true, but it could be an adverse effect of the whole, even just what people see as the definition.
I think also too, some of the maybe fear of moving digital is that it's unknown to people outside of maybe marketing who they need to get buy-off from. I can present to a board of saying, hey, this is what I want to do. We want to geo-target people, or we want to do this, or we want to do this. And they're like, I don't understand that. I don't even know how to use Twitter. What am I? So I, have a Twitter account, but I don't know how you would market on it, And so people who aren't engaged in it, they know that billboards work. They've looked at billboards for their whole life. They've driven past them. So I think that holds back some people in the sense that if they're not into marketing as their job and advertising, then some of the non-traditional marketing things could frighten them. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what to expect from this, or how do you track it, or all those questions and red flags come up.
And how hard is it to set up when I could call my billboard company and throw up a billboard in a matter of hours or something, versus setting up some hard Google AdWords campaign that they just don't understand at all. So.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of covered traditional marketing there. Digital marketing is, we'll go into each of the different channels that's represented in this, but really digital marketing is anything that is digital across a platform. So whether it's a computer, your desktop, your mobile device, your tablet, things of that nature, pretty much anything that's not traditional is nowadays digital, and you'll find digital has a whole lot more channels just by way of the technology and investment that people are putting into it at the moment. Quickly, let's just talk about some of the traditional roots. We wanted to give you kind of a fun history of really where marketing actually started. I know for some of us, we think that Mad Men is in this picture here. It might be the origination of it, but I started kind of thinking about that, and I was watching Game of Thrones, as I'm sure most people did this past Sunday, and you have the fish vendor, and she's selling her oysters, but she's going around and she's yelling about her oysters, and I was sitting there, I'm like, that's as original marketing as I can remember. And so I actually started digging up different definitions and historical facts about where marketing started, and most of the historical scholars on marketing, if there is such a thing, were saying that it really does go back to the ancient times, but in a more realistic and relevant time, it started more around the 20th century, when we started to see businesses evolving and having entire business groups where a marketing department, and they didn't necessarily have marketing departments per se, but they had that kind of strategy built into businesses for the first time in the early 20th century. And then of course we work up into the early 1920s, up to the 1950s, when Mad Men and all of that starts to begin. And for me, that's the turning point. I don't know if you guys would agree with that, but that's where I feel like brochures become very popular. You get the radio ads, you start using, if people watch Mad Men, they start to use sex to sell, they start to use just a little bit more, they get more risque, and they find it to be more personal, and they find it to be more effective at that point. I really think that's when the messaging started to be built into it. I don't know if you have thoughts on any of that.
It's interesting, at the very end of that slide, it talks about non-essential products. And I think as people begin to have more disposable income, before it was sheer survival. I need to buy food for my family. We make clothes. But you don't see things now into today's economy where so much of what we have is frivolous, meaning we don't absolutely need it to survive. It's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and because we have most of them, taken care of, we're just going up the food chain. And so for us, it's really, we're buying things that we don't need. I look at my purchases over the last couple of months, and most of them I don't really need to purchase. I just simply want to purchase them, and advertising helps sway me on that. And so that's really where I think marketing comes in, is to say, we know you have disposable income, and here's something you can dispose it on.
I was listening to NPR the other day, and they were doing a story about the switch when humans went from needing to do things to survive till when they had so much food and everything else, they were just doing things to be doing them. And just this, there's a very visible switch when we were able to produce enough for ourselves, and just how instantaneously that created so many different markets and different things that we really didn't need and whatnot. So
I think a big switch kind of in the history of time was technology, being able to advertise outside of just the people you physically are near. Whereas you were talking like cavemen or whatever, in ancient world, it was like who walked past my store.
Right.
I could yell to them, buy, my pineapple or whatever. But, the era of like Mad Men and things like that, and why I think marketing had that big shift at that point is now, I have radio, I have TV, I have things that I can broadcast much larger, a lot louder voice than I had in the past, and so that's where you have to start kind of getting creative on how do I talk to people and how do I engage people, far away to want my product more so than just this guy who I can tell wants water.
Yeah,
because we're in the desert.
That's a good point.
Absolutely, and I think actually that leads into just the next portion of it, which is when did digital start? And so really, most people would say that digital became a thing in the 1980s with the advent of the computer. And not that that's right when the computer itself was built, but that's when computers with enough power to really do complex equations and different things of that nature really came to be. But then the real shift is obviously in the 90s when the internet begins. And I think to your point, that's when it went from even having a radio or TV station to being the World Wide Web. And we instantaneously had access to the world with all these new products. And it just got that much of a bigger voice, to your point as well. I thought this was interesting. Just a couple of these pictures of Yahoo, which is still going today. I'm pretty impressed by that fact. But they were originally, if you don't know, as a quiz question, was called Jerry's Guide to the World Wide Web, which started in 1994. So I thought that was interesting. So traditional marketing at its core, let's just briefly talk about what is traditional marketing. We touched on most of these marketing channels here. And so this gives you an overview of what we kind of talked about briefly before. But I wanted to talk with the group just about how it has changed, because so many people say that traditional marketing is dead. And I think, being the digital marketing director for an advertising agency, you might hear me say, yeah, absolutely, but I couldn't agree or disagree with that more. And so this slide is just kind of showing what I think, and this is a totally non-scientific rating of the different channels, but this is what I think the swap has become. And so where back in the day, I think radio was probably one of the most effective channels. Every household could really afford a radio. Presidents were doing fireside chats, and we were really connected to our radio. So to be able to put an ad on the radio would be highly effective and something that people were really paying attention. And you had the entire family together at that point, so your reach was just incredible, no matter what demo or geo your product was really trying to go after.
And it's interesting, the past of traditional marketing was so effective because people, their lives were simpler, there was less technology, and there's usually only a few ways to actually digest outside communication and media coming in. And because of that, there was 5 or 6 stations on television. You just simply threw up an ad. What's interesting about today is so different than then. The Pandora can be so effective because you can say, I want to reach people that have this interest, hobby, niche, etc. Whereas of the past, it was, there's just only a few stations and everyone listens to them. And so today's marketing, you have to be a lot more clever, a lot more sophisticated, a lot more advanced, because everybody consumes media a million different ways. Whereas of the past, there was a few channels.
And I think with that, as a company, you need to know who you need to target and who is your customer. Because to that same point, if I just put an ad on TV back in yesteryear, I Love Lucy days, then you're just capturing everybody. You don't know who you're capturing. You're just hoping somebody sees it and wants to buy your product. Now you have to, because you only have so much money you can spend in any given year or month or whatever. Yeah, you have to know, who is my target. Are they 30-year-old single people? Or are they 80-year-old widows? I don't know. You have to know who your target is because you need to know where to spend. You can't just say click a button and say everyone's going to see this commercial. So I got everybody covered. So,
and to your point, which I think is well made, is that you have to understand your audiences well enough to know what are the behaviors that drive buying decisions and where do they consume media. So I love when I'm looking at females between the ages of 25 to 40 that I need to reach, that are moms. I just watch and observe my wife for a week, and then I get an idea from my client and say, hey, this is how you need to reach her, because she doesn't touch her laptop all day. She's constantly on her iPhone, and she'll read her iPad. And so it's just, the channels that she's engaged with and focused on. I just think watching and observing how people are consuming and what's actually influencing behavior is some of the best ways of then knowing which channels to then drive.
And that may fall so perfectly into this whole concept of the traditional idea. I mean, that is nothing more traditional than just observation. And now we've gone to, we can heat map your desktop, and we can digitally video you as you use e-commerce site. We can do all of these things. And so oftentimes we sit down with our clients and we ask them if they've ever done a focus group to talk to their clients. And back to what you were saying, talking to sales and marketing, sales is out there, trying to solve the problem. But the third group that I continue to talk about that I think needs to be more involved in, probably the forgotten group of all this, is really customer service. I mean, they're the end user of what I like about your product and what I don't. And so many times people are going to be very verbal about what they don't. If we were to take that feedback and then feed it back into a digital campaign, just how successful that really could be at reaching the right people.
That's interesting.
I will note here, you'll see I put TV ads last on the then, and I just wanted to qualify that simply due to income. Not as many people had televisions back then as they do now, and television ads were expensive, and so it wasn't quite as accessible, although I think I would agree with Phil that most people would be gathered around the TV, and so your audience would still be captive in that scenario. So moving along, if we just want to talk a little the dawn of the digital marketing age, and so here are the digital marketing channels, and this is legitimately a small portion of all the different channels that are available. You could probably break up any of these bubbles into a number of different subsets of themselves. But just for the conversation and to keep us kind of moving along on the topic, I condensed it into this, but even so you can just see how many more are already available in this than there were previously with the traditional. And so ranking these as well, I think in the past, what I'm showing here is there were about 4. We talked about the dawn of the internet and whatnot, and how important SEO was back then. I mean, SEO was everything. You could keyword stuff, you could hide your text, you could do so many incredible things. You could game it. I mean, SEO was everything when the internet first started, and to see how that's really evolved to, for us, I mean, we took SEO from number 1 to number 5, as SEO really has become a function of a lot of other marketing channels at this point. So I also put web design as second, which might seem a little weird, but I really felt like web design could be so poor back then that it wasn't all about the art of web design as I think of it today. And so I think the SEO was more important than the actual. If you could just get a site up, you'd be good to go, and then you could SEO it and be a winner. So that's why I at least chose to rank them that way. Then on the other side, we have email marketing as the number 1, and we continue to see email marketing as a success. I don't know about you guys, if you feel the same way on that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because our buyers at least are not very spontaneous buyers. You don't just go buy a house tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like you would a pack of gum.
Mm-hmm.
And so email marketing is a good way just to keep them engaged. You get a customer who comes into a model home, they might not be looking at buying for 2 years, or a year or whatever, and just keeping that interest, or we might not be ready to sell. They see a sign go up or us developing land, and they call us or email us and they want information, but we don't have it yet because we're still developing the land, product, that type of thing. And so email marketing is just a good way to stay engaged with clients. That's relatively low cost, just to stay engaged. And so we use it a lot, at least in our industry.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, I whenever I've looked for a house, and even still am, I'm still getting emails, and based off of what my preferences were. I forget what the program is, and you can probably speak to that, but where you can just put in the criteria that they're looking for, and they get like a daily alert or weekly alert. And so I think real estate's probably one that takes the most advantage of that, of kind of, to your point, whether it's ready or not, or if they didn't find the house, it's always dripping on you, like, here's the latest listings, what do you think about any of these, to try to get that call back and whatnot.
I will say that day in and day out for our clients, that the first question we ask them is, what are you doing with your database of customers, potential customers, leads that you've acquired? And if they're doing nothing, it is the first thing we will do every time, because it's an audience you own, it's fairly inexpensive, and it's those prospects that are probably most likely to convert next to a customer. And so for us, email marketing, it's the old dog that still does most of the tricks. And if you're not doing that, you're not being very effective. And once you check the box on that and you're very effective, you can kind of move on to some of the others.
Absolutely. And I think, we try to do these webinars to give you real takeaways, and I think that's one right there. I mean, I really think that right now you could look at your own email lists that you're and how you're using them, and are you using them as effectively as possible. It might seem really simple, but when was the last time you looked? We find with our clients it's longer than we would hope. The next one was the web design, which is number 2, which actually maintained its position. And the reason I put it so high, even though a lot of people will say it's not, an inbound driver of revenue, but the fact that web design itself, not SEO or some of the things that are building the links for you, but with Google's new algorithm and all the different devices, web design across device has become just so important, and that user experience has really become huge. So having a great web design is absolutely critical to the success of your marketing, in my opinion.
And I will say that web design today equals brochures of the past. I can't think the last time we actually printed a brochure at Fluid, or even for a lot of our clients, the first thing that people see, their first engagement with your brand, is your website. And so that becomes one of the best. It's not necessarily one that's actively going out and seeking people potentially, but it's probably the first thing they're responding to in how you tell your story.
And there's a number of others listed on here. I'll let you guys kind of just view those. The ones in red on the left, just to explain that, are the ones that didn't even exist in the beginning. And so you can just see again how few there were, and how many have come up. And again, this is even a short list of all the possible channels. I will say, if you guys are interested in this, we did a social ROI webinar that you guys can go back and see. It will be on our resources page, so getfluid.com/resources. And we actually, it was during March, so we did a March bracket, and we put all the different marketing channels up against each other and had you guys vote to move them into the next stage until we had a champion. Email won that one as well, but you can also see some of the social channels and how they rank in this if you want a little bit more detail on it. So just keep moving. The new form of marketing emerges, and in my opinion, this is where we're at, and this is the one thing that trumps the whole concept of, is traditional dead? Is digital the way to go? And it just has nothing to do with that. I think if people are saying that to you, you should be questioning, other things, because it means that they're not really considering this omni-channel approach that we'll talk about. And so this slide here is kind of showing you the new landscape, and kind of where it came from. And so as the business model evolution was, we went from traditional, we went to e-commerce, which was more or less throw up the site, put the SEO behind it, and see if people will make a purchase. And as things have kind of evolved, we went into multi-channel. And even today, I think multi-channel is a marketing buzzword, and it might be misunderstood. I think sometimes people think that it's omni-channel marketing, but they're two very different things. And so multi-channel is really more where a customer is doing what Phil was explaining about his wife. Look at a product on the phone, go to the tablet, and then maybe make a purchase. But those ads could be completely different, and they might even have a whole different look and feel. They might even have different offers to them. It's, what am I doing with my retargeting? And that might be a retargeting group, whereas my AdWords team is in a separate cubicle or area, and they're not really talking to one another. And so that's really what multi-channel is. Anytime you have more than one marketing channel going. But omnichannel is really where we wanted to focus, and the thing we want to teach you guys most about today. And the omnichannel approach is just the absolutely seamless marketing approach across all devices and all channels, meaning that the entire corporation, and back to Ronnie's point, that it's marketing and sales being in alignment. So if the sales guy is selling something, it's the exact same thing that the marketing guy is selling, and the look and feel of that is the same across desktop and mobile, and even across billboard and radio and TV. So it's just this one cohesive message, and that doesn't mean you can only say one thing. It just means that the look and feel and tone and everything else that you're providing always feels like your company. And so sometimes you get campaigns that feel disjointed, we've heard, and that's kind of what's happening when you're in a multi-channel approach. But omnichannel is just a little bit more seamless, and really where if you're trying to reach the the prism of marketing, that's what we're really shooting for at this point.
I do think that one thing you said is important to point out is you can speak more than one ad, if you will, or more than one message. But I think in today's world, it's even more important. You can't contradict something. I can't remember, and I wouldn't say what the company's name was anyway. I got like what do they call it? Great Values? Is that what it is? Like all the coupons
Mailer,
in the mail?
Yeah.
So I got one of those that had a certain ad, and it expired on X date. And then in just like your Sunday paper type, it had just a bunch of other coupons, but they were two like totally different ones. So it's like, well, I'll take this one. This is a way better deal. Like one was like 20% off, one was 15% off. Mm-hmm. But they were advertising like the same weekend, of time frame. Yeah. And so I think to that point, like sure you can have more than one message, but like you don't want to contradict your message. So that when somebody comes into your sales office or to buy, you're speaking the same promotion or whatever you have kind of going at that time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's colors and words and how do you answer. If our website is really fun to read and, we're kind of just playing around a little bit, and then you get somebody on the phone and they're super stiff and it's just totally different than that experience you got by reading, you've kind of failed as far as how are you building your brand reputation and things of that nature. So I think there's a lot of things to it, but I'm glad you brought that up, Ronnie, because I don't want to have omnichannel be seen as something that we're not using segmentation on. The message can still be directed to that age group, to that gender, to that geo, whatever it is. It just has to be that everybody's working together and everybody's a little bit more on the same page. And that comes back to customer service, sales, and marketing talking to one another.
I also think, though, from an omnichannel approach, thinking about, even Home Depot, who I'm a perfect audience for, and they're talking about how do you kill those dang weeds in your yard and the dandelions. And so they now have a new app which allows you to identify the weed and then what the appropriate action is to take and what the solution you could potentially buy from them. And so I'm seeing that in the App Store. I first saw that as a television ad while at the gym running. I see that, digital ads served up to me as I browse the internet. And of course I can walk into the store and have that same experience. So Home Depot was surrounding me as a homeowner with a yard, with a weed problem in April and May like all of us have in Utah. And it's saying, hey, we actually came up with a pretty dang good solution that allows you to take a picture, identify the weed, do this. So they have the technology back end to truly control, in a positive way, the omnichannel experience. But all of the channels are pointing to simultaneously, here's a solution. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
No, I agree. And I will also say, though, I think that some of this omnichannel, you start thinking, oh, my marketing team's not big enough. Oh, I don't have a big enough budget. Oh, I don't have the technology to do it. But really, it's just communication. We could be talking about your billboard, matching the landing page, matching the contact us form. As simple as that. Then you don't have to have huge things. It's just that seamless integration of your message across all channels.
I think more and more in today's world, people expect it, though, as a customer. I think all of us have been frustrated by companies where we've gone to their website or to their store, and it's just like, how fluid it is just seems broken. Mm-hmm. It just seems so scattered and disconnected, and do they even know what they're talking about? And I think all of us have had that experience, and maybe we haven't recognized it as omnichannel, but we just feel like, I don't really understand this. And I think omnichannel helps just get a grasp of a personality of a company because they're talking to you in so many different ways. like nobody has a friend that they only talk to one way.
Yeah.
You know, you talk to them verbally, text, phone, voicemails, emails, you know, so you gotta, then that's how you develop a friendship with them.
Yeah.
So if you're only blasting people with one message, you know, they can't really get to know who you are as a personality of a brand unless you're kind of telling them the same message in 100 different ways to where you can say, I associate that brand with, you know, a punk rocker or a, you know, violinist or whatever. You know, you kind of have a mental image of brands of like who, almost a friend of, that you know personally who kind of, they're like, oh, kind of like that person.
You really touched on something fun there, and it's, you know, we're always doing buyer personas of our consumer, but have you ever really done a corporate persona of who are you? And I've done this with a number of companies where we've sat down and we've picked, you know, if you were a truck, what kind of truck would you be? And then you have to build out the specs of it and all those things, and it's the who, what, and why of the whole entire process. But by the end of it, people are actually more passionate about your brand, and they act the way that they were normally going to act rather than act the way as if they had to go in a company and kind of act to that brand or be somebody else. So the brand actually becomes the people within the corporation versus the people in the corporation having to adjust to be the brand, and sometimes they lose authenticity because of that. I did switch just so you guys could see the definition of omnichannel marketing. I think we kind of covered it, but I thought Marketo had a good definition, which is just, it refers to a significant shift. Marketers now need to provide a seamless experience regardless of channel or device. So really with that, I just wanted to quickly jump into a couple of great marketing or omnichannel campaigns that are out there, and we just picked a few, and then we kind of want to open up the discussion to the group and talk about maybe some of our own experiences as well. And so just real quickly with REI, this picture shows how they went from the magazine ad to their desktop to their app, and even at stand-up kiosks and the in-store. And I think we forget so much about it if we're in the retail, and you know, maybe for model homes, yeah, I mean that's the real touchable piece of it that then you boil down into a website or a brochure or a piece of paper that you can touch, and how do you have that same look and feel? And so REI did this one, but really I wasn't even going into a specific campaign, but if you've ever dealt with REI, I think you've noticed what a great job they do, and I've been loving going into REI since I was a little kid, just because of how much fun it is, and they do a good job of extending that outside of the store itself.
And I think REI does a good job of not only marketing and branding, but creating an experience for you with REI, then helping you create your own experiences and memories. So constantly I'm getting marketed to, hey, we're having a class on how to snowshoe and how to do this and how to, you know, fly fish and how to do this. And so I can go in, have an experience with them, and by the time I've done that, already being a member, I'm kind of locked into REI for life. I mean, I've become such an advocate because they're teaching me how to do something that I then become passionate about. And then I go have an experience and think, well, that started at REI. And so I think they're wise to help, you know, people create their own experiences in the outdoors, and, you know, they've done a nice job with that.
Absolutely. And they are a lifestyle brand, you know, and I think so many people feel like you have to be an outdoor company, you have to be a sports company, a running company, a diet company, something like that to be a lifestyle brand. But I think any brand can really become a lifestyle. I mean, I even think for you, Ronnie, there's ways to, your home is your life, you know, and so what is that lifestyle and what are you selling? You talk about some are more custom than others, and, you know, how do you display? Maybe you can talk a little bit too, how you guys kind of put in the type of builds you're making and finding that right person to match.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, something we always are talking about whenever we're making decisions. I mean, our group's pretty small. There's about 5 of us that are kind of the key decision makers, if you will. And whenever we're talking, our president always, you know, brings back the question of, you know, we need to remember that we're building people's homes. This is where their memories are made. This is where their kids are raised. This is where they teach them how to do math, read, ride a bike. You know, this is where all those things are happening. And so we need to take those decisions in what we do to make sure that they have, you know, as best experience as possible. And so, you know, understanding and knowing kind of their needs is crucial to us, and realizing the end user, this, you know, is potentially their biggest investment, you know, things like that. And so when you kind of speak to a lifestyle, you know, downtown or something like that typically has one demographic of people.
Yeah.
Right? You have like the young hipster type thing
Mm-hmm.
that is easier. But like for instance, like one of our communities in Davis County, people like variety of lifestyle. They don't want to live just by or age restricted. Those are the only two types that you see that is just solely one demographic. Is I want to live in a community of everybody over 55, or you have kind of a downtown vibe of everybody's kind of a young, public transportation type that just wants to live in a city. But I think in most suburban neighborhoods, people like to see a mix of people because they want the old couple up the street. They want the young family with kids riding their bikes, but then they want everybody else. That nobody wants a neighborhood of just all the exact same people. And so our demographic in that sense is more price point, more so than lifestyle, if you will.
Okay.
Just because it's kind of what in a lot of ways can you afford from a price standpoint? Are you looking for something around 300,000? Because somebody in the 300,000s, let's just say, could be an old couple, they could be a young couple, they could be a more mature couple. So I don't know if that answers kind of what you were looking for, your question, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually makes me think of other questions. Could you walk us through like that situation? Tell us, I'm a 35-year-old. I might be looking at about $350,000. What is your guys' process to put somebody in the correct place? And maybe what are some of the marketing channels they may experience as they go through that?
We're different in the sense that, than a lot of companies, or products, I should say, in the sense that people have really one location they can buy our product. Whereas when we're looking at REI, you can buy online, you can buy, in their store, different things like that. And some of their stuff's, quick purchases, things like that. Ours are well thought out purchases. If you know anybody who's ever bought a home, it's not like you just jump online and you're browsing KSL or Zillow and you say, I like that one, I'm just going to buy it.
Yeah.
That's just not how the sales process works. And so as a home builder, we always want to get them in with our sales team, and because in order for me to buy, it takes a lot of education as well. So that's where our industry is a little bit different because you're buying such a big purchase. You're talking about what tile you want, what carpet you want, third car garage, not third car, how big my lot, which direction does it face? You're taking into consideration every aspect of your life, and you have to kind of condense it down into writing it out on paper and saying, I want to buy this. And so our process is a lot of discovery, is getting a person with an agent where that agent can drill you essentially with questions.
Yeah.
To some degree, just get to know you. What do you want? And then, kind of take from there of, well, this is what we have available. But if it's just, hey, I can spend $350,000, we just throw out, oh, well, here's all the homes at $350,000. That doesn't work as well because you might, just say, well, I don't want to live in this type of neighborhood. So our sales process is a lot of discovery of just really trying to figure out what do you as a buyer need and want to make your life the lifestyle you want. And then here's our one community that fits perfect, or two communities, or you won't like this home plan because it doesn't have this, then it doesn't flow well with, this particular thing or whatnot. So it's probably more discovery than most businesses have, and a lot longer buying process than most businesses deal with.
Sure.
And I would say having been just through that process that you described, it's very important to educate and educate and educate. I found that those buyers or builders that educated me more and were willing to give me honest answers and not try to close me sooner, the more prone I was to listen. Just because for me, having not built a home before, you're just soaking up as much information as you possibly can, and you're not going to be comfortable making a decision until you get to that certain, I feel comfortable knowledge threshold. So I think so much of that courting and dating experience that Henry Walker can provide is on that educational informative front.
And I think every company has an educational standpoint to it of how much you have to educate, right? Just
absolutely.
everyone's different. Some might be you have to really know the ins and outs, like you said when you were building. It took you a long time, lots of times of meeting, lots of research. Where else can I buy? All those types of things. A car, I would say, is also another kind of investment of that you're spending some time looking at it.
I think it's just the mid tier of it's the next is the house.
Yeah, and then like a pack of gum, all you have to know is a peppermint or spearmint.
That's exactly what I thought.
But you still need to know. Like you don't want. Airhead's the only one who can get away with like a mystery flavor, right? Just like who knows what it is. But I think there's a certain level of education that everybody needs to be provided.
I think that's one of the best points I've heard in a long while. Basically, what I feel like is we're rushing from, hey, here's my brand, buy. And it's like, well, you didn't teach me anything. I didn't learn to trust you at all. You just kept saying buy, 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 buy. And now I'm kind of a little upset with you. Whereas the brands that do so well, where it's, you were talking about the Avis or just in what you're talking about with your discoveries, it's I want to talk to this person and learn and educate, and that's all free to that person, and they don't really have to give as much of themselves other than what they really want to give. And so how in our own digital strategies, and in a lot of cases our traditional strategies, can we offer education before making a hard sell? And I think that's something we could all be thinking about as far as what kind of content pieces do you have? Do you have some type of calculator that is available to users?
Mortgage calculators.
A mortgage yeah, I mean, so right there, you're letting people do their own homework and kind of learn their own area and what their comfort zone is on your website, most likely, but not with a salesperson saying, okay, now buy. It's like, okay, and you get to play around a little with it. There's a little bit of trust. And so providing tools of that nature, other brochures and things of that nature, maybe like a home checkoff, as you're building your home, things to consider, that we can be checking off. To your point, Phil, how do you help Phil learn when he knows nothing about it, but he's going to do it? And
you know what that learning process looks like, and so you start to give me experiences that I'm gonna, I need to get to this certain point, and anyway.
And I think that's just across every industry. I mean, that's not the real estate or building world. It's everybody.
I think especially in industries that have any type of sales, then or salesperson or anything like that, because everyone tries to avoid salespeople.
Yeah.
Car lots are the busiest on the weekends, after hours. Everybody drives through. Oh, I like this car. I like this car. But nobody wants to pull in a parking lot and see the salesman come walking out the door. You're like, oh crap, they saw me.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with model homes. It's the same way with anybody who has a sales front. You walk into a cell phone store. You don't want them to sell you a phone. You want to look at the phones first. You know? And so with the omni-channel topic that we're talking about, the buyers today are much more empowered and want to be empowered and informed, and they expect it of your company and your brand. And when you can't find information or get your questions answered, you're frustrated and you move on, because there's other choices. In traditional media, you had, let's just say, 2 car manufacturers or 2 car salesmen in town. That's all you had. You had those options only. But in now today's world, I mean, you can just jump online and you can pick whatever car you want anywhere. You can get it shipped in from out of state. Your choices are just endless. So in that sense, you have to provide that information, or else people will just leave. They'll just go to another site because they're not getting the information. And that's I think why digital media is good, is because it's adaptable, it's customizable. I mean, a billboard can't say like, "Hey, Phil, buy this home," But like digital stuff is also moldable. That I can send email campaigns that have Phil's name in it and has his information or things that he likes. It can be more customized that way. And people kind of expect that personal touch.
Absolutely.
Just for time's sake, I was going to say the next 2 slides we might flash on the screen related to kind of, some of this omni-channel, but what I wanted to get to is just this experience, because that's really where we're getting to. How do you give customers an experience that becomes tangible, physical, touchable, and personalized to them? I think about Minority Report, when Tom Cruise is walking through the store and it's zapping his eyes and personalizing the advertising to him. So everything omni-channel-y is unique. And I think we're going to get to that point rather quickly. And I will say that those brands that I become most passionate about is those brands that give me an experience that I can immerse myself in, that I can create memories from, and then become brand advocates for. I just did Questival with Cotopaxi, and I would say that's probably one of the best omni-channel campaigns I've seen. Not only is there tangible products, I can buy them from the store, I can buy them online, I get their email marketing, I see them in social, but they have me go on a 24-hour adventure that I had to tell my friends more than 177 times how great Cotopaxi was and blast them all over social media. And I walk out of that and I saw the CEO a few days later, and I just said, "This is the most brilliant marketing you could ever contrive." He said, "Isn't it?" And I said, "Because I love doing it. I paid to go sign up."
You paid to do
this.
this.
I paid to go do this and have this experience. And at the end of the day, I walk out and have an incredible experience love Cotopaxi even more, and you guys have 5,000 more faithful followers along with their hundreds of fans each. And I think that is a great demonstration of more than just omnichannel, but immersive experience marketing.
Absolutely. Well, and I think, we've touched on a number of really great examples. Right now, it's just a quick summary of everything. I think really, to the point, marketing at its core is just about companies' products and making sure that the products are available to be bought. Traditional is an extension of that in what we kind of consider the old school, and I think you guys have a good understanding of that, and digital marketing maybe being the new school and really giving you that broad worldwide reach that you're looking for. But I think the long and the short of it is that traditional is not dead. And you need to have multiple different channels and multiple different touch points. And what you really need to do, and when we say it's time to graduate your marketing, it's time to go back and it's time to look at, am I using all the channels that I should be? Am I being influenced by people who just want to sell a certain product and really might not be thinking about marketing holistically? And so that means, we can't do billboards don't work. I'm here to tell you, we do them all the time. They're super successful. So you need to look at it for your company and not let other people influence you within that. And then just because of systemic shift away from the traditional, it's kind of created a void for some of these channels. One thing we didn't get to talk too much about, but I wanted to mention at least once, was the direct mail. I mean, the absence of direct mail created a void, so now if you get direct mail, you're happy about it. Or if you get anything custom, I mean, I'm of the young enough demographic that if I get something that I actually want, like an invitation to a party from my sister for her kids or something, I get so excited about that. And you can do that with your own company. Send them something that is relevant and fun and doesn't have to be just a throwaway spam mailer. But that feels so good now, and that's something that we totally went away from. And so is there an opportunity there? So I think just look at it and then just think about the omni-channel experience of the entire thing. Are you aligned with your sales team? Are you aligned with your marketing team? Have you involved customer service and your C-level? Is everybody on the same page, and are you delivering one cohesive message, whether that's on a digital format, a traditional format, in your office, or via phone, however you're doing it. So anyway, I want to thank you all for joining us again at this month's Fluid webinar series. We are quickly going to jump to Facebook Live, where we're going to do our Q&A with Ronnie today. So if you give us just about 10 more minutes, we have about 5 questions that came in, and we'll go ahead and address those. I'm thinking we're live. So if anybody here wants to just see the video version of what we're doing right now, you guys can jump onto our Facebook page, just facebook.com/getfluid. But let's just go ahead and get started, guys. If you don't mind, I'll pitch you a few questions. So first, I think this is just everybody's fear, to be quite honest, and I'll have Ronnie if you want to talk to this, but what traditional marketing efforts are soon to be obsolete? You guys have a guess, and I'll let you start, Ronnie.
Soon to be obsolete, just in general?
If they are, yeah, that's just our question, I guess.
I don't think any will be obsolete. I think there will always be a place for it. I think print media will continue to get less and less. But at least for us, we still have the old timer who comes in who wants a price sheet printed out and handed to him. He doesn't want them emailed to him. We still have that. But I think that more and more will move to digital, where you can just send it over and I have it on my phone immediately. Or QR codes came and went pretty quick. But
yeah.
Just that type of thing where you can just kind of instantaneously have that information. I think. I should say, I think collateral will go more away. Not necessarily print advertising in, like, I'm reaching out to people, but more the collateral that you just kind of have in-house. Like, I walk into a Verizon store and, here's a brochure.
Sure.
Like, I just think those types of things will more or less go away. But not that I can really think of.
And I might just share, I think that Yellow Pages and the decks and all that and the printed forms have basically, for the most part, gone extinct.
Nobody likes when they show up on their doorstep.
Exactly, and you just walk right to the garbage can. And that pretty much has gone extinct. Those companies are now remade into online marketing companies, basically. The other, I think we'll see more and more, the community newspapers, I think, will still be effective. And I actually read my community newspaper every week when it comes. But what I don't read is the printed version of your, more mass distributed. Not as often. I think those still will be read, but I think you'll continue to see, readership decline pretty dramatically. Just because so much of news consumption, because it's real time on demand, needs to happen. And it's not to say that takes away journalism. Journalism just needs to continue to adapt to more of an online environment.
Absolutely. Actually, a slide we didn't include today was all of the extinct publications that have gone out. And it was really interesting to see the date on most of that is 2009. You can see they just couldn't survive the 2007, made it a couple years, and the readership and everything else just put them under. But I wonder if that really hadn't occurred, if some of them could have survived and adapted into maybe smaller publications, more digital, whatever it would be. But I agree. I think that's a great answer, guys. Another question that we didn't necessarily touch on for this, but is video the future of marketing? And maybe, Ronnie, you can talk about, do you use video currently now? Do you have a plan to do so? What are your thoughts?
More of a plan to do so. We don't really use video now, but people are lazy and they want to just come onto a website and watch a 30-second video rather than read a 2-paragraph statement. And so I think inherently, because people are that way, it's easier to engage. They can see personality a lot more. You can learn a lot more about a 30-second video than what you could read in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And so I do think that it's more that way. I mean, you even see with what are they called? When like an iPhone, like you take a picture and it does like 2 seconds in front and behind that
the
picture.
live,
Live photos, though it's called. But things like that. It's just video is just the way people consume things.
Yeah.
Just because you can get it in such a short amount of time, and I think. 10 years ago, that was a photograph maybe, because a photo, the whole the photo tells like
picture worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, worth 1,000 words, that type of thing, because you can get a lot out of seeing something versus reading something. Yeah. But now it's taken it one step further, and it's gone from just seeing one still image to now seeing video, to where I feel like it's really important, because when I go to a website and it's just all just content, all this crazy content that I'm gonna have to read, like I just feel, or even you get an email that's over like 2 paragraphs, you're like, oh man, why couldn't they just like record this and say? I mean, kind of, you think that just because we're lazy people and we want to consume this stuff quickly, and so I think video's definitely something we want to move into and implement more, and I think just in general it will be.
Okay. That just makes me segue on a personal interest, but have you looked at drone photography or video as part of that strategy, or is that still a little ways off, do you think?
No, it is. It still definitely is a part of it. The one downside to drone photography is that communities typically look good when they're done, right? Not when they're a dirt field.
Sure.
And so, but yeah, I mean, there's still definitely uses for them. But they're cool for sure. Our photographer has one, so yeah, we use it every now and then.
Yeah, cool.
I even noticed when I was selling my home on Zillow that I could list photos, but it really was pushing me to go do a video walkthrough of my home, because people like that more immersive 3-dimensional experience, and they said viewers who add a video walkthrough or listings usually get more of and it had X% engagement rate. So even just in listing a home, people being able to virtually walk through it.
Yeah, and I mean, we're on Facebook Live at the moment, so I think you can understand what Fluid's thoughts are on the future of video. What is, next question, what's the first step to creating an omni-channel marketing machine? I don't know, maybe we should address that one.
I'd love to start on that.
Yeah, please, Phil.
I would think that, as we talked at the beginning, first understanding your audience, understanding very deeply their behaviors, what motivates them, purchasing patterns, and really seeing how they consume media. So before you can go architect what the plan is, I think you need to understand them in a level of detail and depth that is more than just a casual, hey, because we're targeting 35 to 50-year-old men, we think this works. You need to go watch them, you need to go observe them, you need to see their shopping patterns. I mean, you have to immerse yourself in that. And then from there, you can begin to build out, well, what does this experience and journey look like? And then figure out what that type of content will be, and then that can be then marry up to what the delivery mechanisms are. So first and foremost, understanding who you're talking to and why you even matter to them and what that compelling story is. And once you have that nailed, it then allows you to build out the appropriate channels. And it does take some experience. I would recommend, whether it's with an agency or an experienced strategist, you want to have a few people you can bounce that off of. But you kind of become more familiar and accustomed to it that sometimes in 30 minutes to an hour, you can have a pretty good skeleton outline of here's our go-to-market plan for the next year, and then start to fill in some of the details.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And then I think step one is have a meeting with your executives that includes your sales team, that includes your customer service head, and tell them this is what we're going to do and this is why we need you. Because in my opinion, if you don't get the sign off and everybody's not on board, then it will slowly disintegrate and it will become a multi-channel campaign before it ever can be an omni-channel campaign. And so I think it's a corporate
initiative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that Phil touched on is just creating that omni-channel campaign is really understanding kind of who your customer is, and I think more so in today's world of how we get out of multi-channel and into omni-channel is we have to know who they are and how they buy. We can't simply just say I'm just going to put an ad out there and people will look at it. Just because we have so much media blasting us all the time, we're really good at ignoring it and picking up just the pieces we're interested in and blocking things or getting Hulu Plus so we don't have ads or different things like that. We have ways around it where in traditional media it was like, well, if I put a billboard up, everyone who drives this road, that's all they see, or I put a commercial on TV, they can't skip it. Everyone's going to see it. Yeah. And so now in today's world, it's more of here's your buyer and here's what they want, and you have to align yourself more with them than we had to advertise in the past. Because in the past, we could just advertise and people were advertised to. Yeah. But now we can't say, no, you need to consume media this way. I'm going to show you this ad. I have to figure out how you're consuming media and kind of slyly slip in there versus just kind of blanket throwing stuff at it. Yeah. And so I think in what you were saying, kind of analyzing what you have before you can really develop a plan is you have to know your customer and how, it's not just simply saying, oh, well, we don't do print. We need to just throw some print out there. Yeah. Because that's an area we're missing. Yeah. Or, oh, we should do a billboard. We don't have one of those. It's not about just blanketing multiple channels. Right. It's about figuring out, really analyzing how do they consume and how do I get in there.
And then drive them down my path instead of the other. That's a fantastic point. Absolutely. Well, I think we have just time for one last question is all. The last question is a digital agency better than a traditional agency, and what's the difference? I guess I'll feed that one to you, Phil.
It's interesting, even as we talk about what Fluid is and what we stand for, I would say that we neither try to couch ourselves as one or the other. We do see some traditional agencies that have arisen in Salt Lake and in other markets that have faltered and failed and have shrunk in size because they never adapted to digital. But then we see some digital agencies that have often even faltered as well, even in their last decade, because they've been so narrow-minded in their approach. And because of that, they get so less, a portion of the pie of the total marketing spend because they only can beat one or two drums. And so when you go to them, you're almost pigeonholing yourself to say, well, they're only going to recommend the two or three things they're good at. I do think what the future is, and as an agency where we'd like to position, I'm sure most agencies, is more of a focus on how do we help grow the business and what can we do that affects both sales and marketing. And how we do that, omni-channelly, and the experience we deliver, whether that's on the traditional side or the digital side, it really doesn't matter the medians that we think are important. To us today, what more matters is how we are reacting to their customers, the consumers that they're seeking to serve. And so, which is better? I would think neither. I think you have to be an agency that is omni-channel focused. You're delivering an experience, and you have to be comfortable with both digital and traditional. Now, I'm not one to suppose that we should all be generalists. I think you should do a few things to do it really well, but then you can lean on and rely on other vendors. So is Fluid, the best at buying billboards in the state of Utah? No, we're not. But do we have some incredible vendors that we rely on that can make sure that we're making the best decision if that's the channel chosen for our clients? Absolutely. And so I think we have to lean even more on the full ecosystem of media and collaborate even more so than ever, because we can't be experts on the dozens and dozens and dozens of different options. What we can do is recommend to a client the direction that they should take, and then from there work with the specialists.
I would have to agree, and I think even Ronnie answered that in his previous question. I mean, if you're going in for digital or you're going in traditional, you're basically counting channels that you're on. then you're not thinking strategically, where's my consumer, and I'm following them versus making them just hopefully run into my ad. And so to pick one over the other is probably maybe a little bit dangerous, where you really should be picking who's the team and who are the people that I like, who align with the type of messaging and the type of product that I sell, and that they kind of get it and they get the aspects of omnichannel in general, of learning the process and getting to know the customer a little closer, and they're asking those types of questions rather than what channel do you want to be on. Well, so guys, I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank Phil for joining us again today. Ronnie, I want to especially thank you for giving us your time. Thank you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, and as always, you guys, you'll find us at the hashtags you see on the screen, or you can direct tweet us at the at Get Fluid, or at Jack Fisher Homes, or at Henry Walker Homes. And we will see you guys next time. I encourage you to bring a sales guy and bring your marketing team, because we are going to be doing Smarketing next month, and we think it will be a really entertaining conversation that will be valuable to your company. So thanks again, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, guys.